for joining today's educational webinar with Cancer Support Community Los Angeles. I'm Abby Espinoza, the Program Coordinator at CSCLA, and I'm honored to welcome you to this week's webinar titled Parenting Through Cancer. Before we begin, if this is your first time joining us, Cancer Support Community Los Angeles is a premier nonprofit organization providing vital social and emotional support to families facing cancer, including patients, caregivers, and their loved ones, all at no cost. Our programs include support groups, healthy lifestyle classes, social activities, and educational programs such as this one. If you would like to learn more about our services or watch past webinars, please visit our website at cancersupportla.org. Before I introduce today's speaker, please note that your video and microphone are automatically disabled for this webinar. Please enter questions for the speaker into the Q&A feature found at the bottom of the Zoom window. Questions will be answered at the end of the presentation. We may not be able to get to all your questions today, but our presenter will get to as many as possible. Please use the chat feature to share comments and resources with other participants or to ask questions of CSCLA. We ask you to limit chat comments to information relevant to this topic. I'll be joined at the end of today's presentation by Jennifer Comiskey, CSCLA's Clinical Supervisor and Youth Program Manager, who will share some information about our Child, Teen, and Family Program. And to introduce today's speaker, Carissa Hodgson is the Director of Programs and Community Outreach at Bright Spot Network, which provides a program of support to parents with cancer who have young children. She has over 16 years of clinical and program experience working with families facing cancer. She has been co-chair of the Youth, Families, and Cancer Special Interest Group at the Association of Oncology Social Work since 2015. Carissa is also a long-term lecturer at the Sandra Rosenbaum School of Social Work at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, where she teaches courses on grief and loss and generalist practice with individuals, families, and groups. She has a private psychotherapy and consultation practice where she specializes in cancer, chronic illness, caregiving, grief and loss, child and adolescent development, family systems, and the queer community. It gives me great pleasure to welcome today's speaker, Carissa Hodgson.
Thank you, Abby. Happy to be here. Go ahead and get my slides going. Again, so excited to be here. Always love working with Cancer Support Community, especially CSCLA, because it's such a fabulous community. Today, I'm here speaking on behalf of Bright Spot Network, although I was the Children, Teen, and Family Program Manager at Gilda's Club Madison for 13 years. So I really do have a deep love for the cancer support community. Today, we're really going to focus on how to support kids through a loved one's cancer. So a lot of this sort of does, it kind of is geared towards children who have a parent or caregiver with cancer, but it is definitely appropriate for any kid who is impacted by cancer, whether that be a grandparent, aunt, uncle, coach, teacher, sibling. I think you'll find some relevant information. So regarding kids who have a parent with cancer, why this topic is so important is because unfortunately we're seeing cancer incidence rise for young adults that overlaps with the age that typical people are having kids. So there has been a 19% increase between 2010 and 2019, and currently about 1 in 5 newly diagnosed cancer patients will have a child 18 or younger. So that's a lot of kids that will have the experience of having a parent with cancer. And it's really important that we recognize that these families, their special needs, how parents can have the tools they need to parent through it, and how kids can be connected to the right resources and information for them to cope with a parent or loved one having cancer. We also know that cancer affects the whole family. So, of course, the person with cancer, the cancer patient, so much of the attention is on them, understandably. But of course, people in their lives, their partner, their children, their coworkers, neighbors, friends, everyone is really touched by this cancer diagnosis. And we really see sort of that mobile shift and change based on that cancer patient's functioning. There's been some research that shows that a child's functioning, their ability to weather a parent's cancer diagnosis, is really strongly tied to their parent's ability to get through a cancer diagnosis. So this really helps support people, especially clinicians, social workers, nurses, anyone on the support team, to recognize how important it is to not only support the cancer patient, but children as well. They need their own space to process feelings, talk about their questions, learn information, learn coping skills, to again understand sort of what they're going through. If a parent isn't connected with the correct resources, that will also unfortunately trickle down. So we're wanting to make sure that parents also have a connection to community that really understands. A research study that now is pretty old, it's still very relevant, compared pediatric cancer patients, kids with cancer, to kids who had a parent with cancer. And interestingly enough, they found that it was the children who had a parent with cancer who showed greater distress. And I think at first the researchers were pretty surprised by that because it does seem like, what experience is more difficult or distressing than being a kid with cancer? And what research theorized, and what I would say tends to be, from my experience, the truth, is that when you're the cancer patient, even if that means you're a kid with cancer, you're in on all of it. You're the one being poked and prodded. And while that is uncomfortable and painful and difficult, there's nothing that's really hidden. And that factor that seems to cause distress is hiding information. And so many well-intentioned adults, parents, grandparents, loved ones, will often keep a cancer diagnosis from their children. Their idea being, I don't want to burden these kids. I don't want them to have to worry about me. They should just get to be a kid. And while I think we can all relate to that, it makes a lot of sense to me. I'm a parent to a 10-year-old myself. Of course, we want to protect our kids. The problem in that comes in that kids are very smart. They're very perceptive. They pick up on changes in routine. They overhear hushed conversations. They pick up on words. They know when just things are different. And because kids have these incredible imaginations, they will make up a story that is often far worse than the truth. So if they're not told the truth, they will think about that monster in the closet, right? They'll create something terrible and they will start to worry about that. So, what we have learned, what research tends to really validate, and as a practitioner, someone who's done this for 17 years now, what I can say is really the best thing you can do for children is inform them in a developmentally appropriate way about what is happening. Even young children. The executive director at Bright Spot, she was diagnosed when she just had a baby and she had a 2-year-old, and people kept telling her, isn't it wonderful? Your kids are so young, they don't understand what's going on. But that didn't sit right for her. And she said, I really felt like I needed to find words to talk to my pre-verbal 2-year-old child about what was going on. Very simply, but like I even feel like she understands something is different. And there's truth to that. Being able to really give words to what's going on, to validate a child's experience is really important. And I will talk about that throughout this presentation about what that means and what words might actually be impactful for those kids. I have to say that the drawing here on this slide was actually from one of the support groups I did with kids when they created what they called the Worry Be Goneinator 5000. And this was because this kiddo really worried a lot about mom who had cancer and was going through treatment. Kids can have these incredible spinning wheels, right? And they really ruminate and worry about things. But by and large, when they're told the truth, we see that anxiety come way down. So I'm going to pause for a second on a tangent and just share a little bit about Bright Spot and who we are and what we did. This is Haley, who I just talked about after she was diagnosed with stage 3 colon cancer. She had just had a baby, she had a 2-year-old, and really found that there was very little out there for parents of young children. And she wanted to make sure that all parents, even those of young kids, had the resources that they need to parent through a cancer diagnosis. So she created Bright Spot Network with our co-founder, Amy Barnes. And what we do is create community for parents with any cancer diagnosis, any stage, living anywhere in the United States. We provide community support and resources for them, their partners, and their kids. Everything is free of charge. It's all virtual. So our programs are either held on Zoom or it's a lot of products that you get through the mail. So what you'll find are free books about cancer that are extremely helpful because we know that one of the best ways to introduce big concepts to young children is through children's books. We provide free art boxes so that parents can have a point of connection with their kid, a financial grant, virtual support groups for parents in active treatment, post treatment, parents with a stage 4 diagnosis, for partners, for bereaved partners. We've got family resource navigation to help get parents connected to local resources or very specific um, resources such as clinical trials and second opinions, that kind of thing. We offer a monthly a virtual group for kids to connect with other kids and learn some coping tools. We have webinars, workshops, and our website itself is just a great hub for free downloadable resources. So, whether you're looking for coloring sheets to help introduce concepts like what is a port, what is an ostomy, common experiences of losing your hair, wearing a mask, we have coloring sheets for all of those things, which is really great for young kids to start to understand these concepts. We have discussion guides and videos, feeling wheels, and all sorts of information that you might find really helpful. So that is all free on our website, downloadable. You can print it, or you can request that we send it to you. What I found in my professional practice, working with families navigating a cancer diagnosis, is that kids really need these three things to do well. And the first is they need access to safe, reliable, and empathic caregivers. They need predictable routines and preparation for changes. And lastly, open, honest, and developmentally appropriate communication. I find that it's helpful to just sort of simplify what feels maybe like a big, scary topic into what feels like a little bit more manageable, like sort of a 3-point program to really help the kids in your lives to navigate a parent or loved one's cancer. I love this quote from Dr. Harpum, who has a book, and she has a lot of books actually, and she herself was a parent with cancer. And she says, the greatest gift you can give your children is not protection from change, loss, pain, or stress, but the confidence and tools to cope and grow with all that life has to offer them. And I think this is really important for parents to sit with because, again, our instinct is to swoop in and protect our kids. We don't want them to have to feel any of these terrible things, right? Unfortunately, life is filled with these really uncomfortable feelings. And while no parent ever wants to have a cancer diagnosis, of course, there are some growth opportunities for everyone, including kids. And I've done some research on this. I've talked to kids, I've talked to parents, and I've actually heard some really interesting feedback about the growth opportunities for kids of all ages to learn how to be very empathic, how to be a caring caregiver, how to sort of prioritize what's important in life. There are many different factors that families point out of, again, well, I never wanted this cancer diagnosis. I can say now, looking in the rearview mirror, how our family really rallied and how they came together and sort of the resilience that was built through this experience. And so I say this not to be, not to be Pollyanna-ish, not to have I'm not promoting any kind of toxic positivity. I'm saying this to say, um, through this hard time, there can also simultaneously be growth. So going back to that 3-point plan, I did talk about well, a few different points, but before I get that, I do want to say these 3 points. The first is parents have a unique expertise on their children. So while you might come to talks like this and you look online and you find some great articles, that's all great stuff. If you're finding information that resonates, wonderful. But don't underestimate your own expertise on your kids. So figure out what makes the most sense for each child, for your family. Filter it through your own gut. You might not have all the answers, but just your presence and your attention and willingness to talk is most important. And I say this because so many times I talk with parents and they get so worried about, I'm going to say the wrong thing, I'm going to do the wrong thing, oh, I'm going to mess up. And I always respond immediately by saying, you know what, you are going to mess up. Let's just say you are going to because we're human. As parents, we make a lot of mistakes, and that's okay. We always have the opportunity to go back and fix it up. So as long as you are just there and showing your kids that I'm going to be a steady presence and I want to have this open conversation and I'm here to talk, that's what's going to matter the most. And lastly, honesty really is the best policy. And this can be a hard one. especially if you're looking at some difficult information, if you are looking at a terminal diagnosis and you have kids asking you if you're going to die. A lot of parents don't want to have to answer that question, and I get it. Um, the thing is that most parents would say, I really believe trust is the most important part of my relationship with my kids. I think most parents would agree with that. And if we lie to our kids or keep the truth for them, we break that trust. So while of course I'm not proposing that you tell your kids everything and fill them in on every little dirty detail, I do just want you to keep in the front of your mind that to enable trust and respect in that relationship with your kid, you probably want to tell them the truth. So going back to that point one about having safe, reliable, and empathic caregivers. For small kids in particular, the most important thing that parents want to pay attention to is making sure their kids are feeling safe, seen, soothed, and secured. This really is about like attachment. If it, is a primary parent or caregiver that has cancer, if they're going to be gone for long periods of time for treatment, for clinical trial, that can be really, really difficult, especially if you're working with an infant or a toddler, and that's going to be hard. It's going to be hard. So working with your support team about how to minimize some of that distress will be important. Figuring out a plan that makes the most sense to you, building a support team where you're bringing in hopefully just a small amount of caregivers that can be that inner circle for your kids will be what you want to focus on. Like I say here, small, intimate, consistent group of caregivers just to minimize the disruption to your kid's life. I talk a lot with parents of young kids who like, and this tends to be moms who struggle if they're going to be gone for a long period of time and their baby is really attached to them, especially if they're breastfeeding and maybe mom has to wean before she's ready. It is emotionally very difficult to feel like your child who was primarily attached to you maybe now starts to prefer the other parent or a grandparent or someone else. And that's really hard. And being able to talk to other moms who can understand that and work through the big emotions surrounding that is really important. So immediate concerns is number one. That kind of takes priority. The other piece I do like to touch on is long-term planning. And I know that no one likes talking about death and dying and they don't want to deal with, all the legal pieces that go along with it. But the parents I talk to that say, I never wanted to deal with this. I felt like I was too young, but after doing it, I gotta say it's a monkey off my back. I hear that all the time. So if you're able to put some time into creating, what your advance directive is, and talking that out with your POA and whoever is going to be your person, have those conversations, identifying guardianship and creating your wills and trusts and what's going to happen if you're disabled. All of these pieces of legal planning, if you can put the time into it, most likely you're going to feel a great deal of relief having done it and just knowing it's taken care of so that you can focus on the present and getting through treatment and getting back to being a parent again. Creating a support team will be helpful. We talked about sort of that more intimate inner circle of caregivers that are going to be in your house. Hopefully, you have some family, friends, neighbors, coworkers that can build the outer circle. These are going to be people who you can delegate tasks to that can do things outside of your house. Maybe it's doing some grocery shopping for you or getting your kids to soccer practice, taking the dog for a walk, making meals. It's usually best if you can identify some kind of team lead that can take care of the support team. And that means it's not you, the person with cancer, and probably not even your partner, because the two of you are so focused on just the day to day. So if you have a best friend, a sister, a parent, whoever it is that can say, I'm really good at organizing, let me take care of sort of your support team and managing the calendar, awesome. There's so many wonderful apps and websites. I know CSC has My Lifeline. These are great platforms where you can create your own calendar and have updates and share that with the entire support team. So it just streamlines everything and it makes things so much more efficient and helpful. Think about peer connections throughout this as well. This is why places like CSC exist because being able to connect with other people that get it is invaluable. um, Talking with other parents about how they're navigating treatment and raising kids. So important. partners really need a space to be able to talk about the nuances and challenges of caregiving because so often they feel guilty complaining because they're like, I need to be the cheerleader, but they need their own support. Kids need this just as much. I know that when I was at Gilda's Club Madison, we had kids that I can think of one story where a young boy and his brother would come to group every week, and the week that we learned his mom was dying, his dad had just told him that night and said, I don't think we're going to go to group tonight because mommy's dying. And the first thing his kid said was, no, we have to go to Gilda's. Like, these are my people. I need to talk to my friends. This is the time I have to go. And I remember I get teary thinking about it. Just the importance of this peer support group for this kid when things were at the hardest. Like that's when that kid needed his friends and his community. So don't underestimate how important those connections are for everyone in the family, even for the littlest of kids. That sense of community and belonging means everything. For so many kids, it's their only space to really talk about it. Even just seeing other moms who are bald and dads using canes, like those themes surrounding cancer that are very visual, kids really soak that up. And to know that other kids are out there is it's very powerful. I tell parents and caregivers to really aim for some kind of point of connection every day to reinforce that I'm here. That presence that I talk about seems to me the most important through line that I can emphasize. Like just show up. And of course, there are going to be days that you're not physically there. And of course, that makes sense. So, is there another way, whether it's through a video call, a text, something that just is like, I'm here? If you are physically with kids, especially young kids, touch is really, really important. And there's so much research that shows, we need that oxytocin and those wonderful hormones that show, like when we have healthy touch, how important it is. For little kids, especially babies, toddlers, preschoolers, being able to snuggle up, cuddle, read books, that's very, very important. Maintaining expectations and rules is also very important. It's funny how often I talk with parents who say, like this is a really hard time. So let's just kind of throw everything out the window. Let's just do what we're gonna do. But when I talk to kids, that really freaks them out. Older kids and teens are able to tell me, gosh, I really started to worry when mom didn't care about my room being clean and me getting my homework done. Like when she wasn't checking on those things, I started to worry because I know that how important those things are. And so, while of course there needs to be some flexibility and accommodation when your life maybe feels turned upside down, underneath it all, kids do still need to feel like there are some expectations, and that because that really reinforces normalcy for them, and that life is going on and other things still matter. So just do keep that in the back of your mind. I say make room for flexibility, like I just said, and also looking beneath the behavior. So if you're starting to see some new behaviors pop up in kids, first, of course, recognize that everyone probably does feel like their life has been turned upside down. And as an adult, you're feeling untethered and not quite sure what to do. Your kids are also feeling that sense of chaos and uncertainty. And that will often look like regressions. If you have young kids, it might be like if they were potty trained, now they're not, so they're having accidents all the time. Or if you have older kids, maybe they're struggling in school, they become a little bit more explosive or irritable. All of these behaviors are very common. And that's not to say you shouldn't pay attention, and I'll talk about this later in the presentation. But just first of all, keep in mind that this is a reasonable response to a pretty big change in their life. The thing that we want to do as adults is get our kids connected to any type of modality that helps them to process all of these big feelings that they're going through. Giving them tons of time to play it out is most important. That's really how kids process is through play. So independent play, joining them in play. This doesn't mean you're doing any specific intervention like play therapy with them. I'm saying truly just like playtime. That is really important for kids, and it's why we don't want to overschedule them or have them, too busy. We really want them to have that sort of unstructured playtime. Anytime that we can give them crayons and markers and time to draw and create and move and dance, that's also really important. Just physical movement in general. And your kids, this is when I go back to parents being the expert. If you have a kid that just is very physical and kinesthetic, if that's how your kid needs to regulate, oh my goodness, this is a time when you want to give them tons of time to move and jump and play and exhaust themselves so that then they're better able to work through these big feelings. Any type of mindfulness practice, there's so many great free videos and online options to do, like yoga and guided imageries. Do it as a family, role model for your kids. This is a really great activity to do together. And then books, of course. I can't say enough good things about children's books about cancer because it tends to be part of your natural rhythm anyway as a parent to read with your kids. And so if you bring in a picture book that starts to explain cancer, cancer treatment, big feelings, grief, what's nice as the adult is the words are there for you. So if you're struggling with what to say and how to talk about cancer and how to explain it, using a book, the words will be right there for you. You just read them off the page. Kids can not only hear these words to start to understand it, but they're also putting together the images and pictures they're seeing. And all of the repetition of reading it, and especially if you're snuggling together and they have that safety and attachment, it all works together for them to help to understand what's happening around them, and it gives them the words and concepts to understand. The second point on my 3-point plan is the predictable routine and preparation for change. Um, Sarah Olsher, who is the owner of Mighty and Bright, and she has so many great books and products out there. She, she's really an expert in this field, and she talked about one of her presentations I went to. She said, "Imagine, as an adult, that you lose your smartphone. Like if it's like me, that's where I keep my entire life, right? And especially it's where I keep my calendar." And you would be pretty distressed and be pretty untethered. You wouldn't know where you were supposed to be and what was happening day to day. And for a lot of kids, when something big and scary happens in their life, they're also feeling that uncertainty of what's happening. I don't know what's happening today, tomorrow. Where's mom going to be? Is she going to be home? Is she going to be not? Like, is grandma going to be here? So if you can give them some kind of schedule or plan and you can keep it really, really simple, it will really help bring their anxiety way down. For little kids that can't read, you can use images and pictures like the image here, where and you can create these calendars on your own. You don't even have to buy anything, but just get a big piece of poster board or even just a white piece of paper and create, each day of the week. Maybe you create little pictures and you can put them on magnets or on Velcro, however you want to do it. That just shows like these are the days that dad is going to be at the hospital. These are the days that grandma will pick you up from school. These are the days I'm going to be home, but probably feeling really sick and tired. I'm going to be on the couch. Anything that gives your children a sense of what's happening is going to give them greater agency and confidence about what to expect week to week. Kids may want to just see it on the wall. Sometimes, if you have a kid like mine, he wants to review the schedule like for the next day every day. Maybe that's how your kids are. Again, this is just their way of feeling a little bit more confident about what to expect in the next hour, the next day, the next week. Older kids, of course, then you can get a little bit more detailed. You can have greater conversations. But all of this is just an incredible tool to help kids get prepared for what's happening. On a greater scale of preparation, it's really important to let your kids know if there's going to be a big change coming up. For instance, a parent is traveling for a clinical trial, they're going to be gone for a week, a month. Start having those conversations, a week ahead of time to start preparing them to answer questions. If you know that you're going to be losing your hair, kids really struggle with that, especially if it's a mom losing their hair. That's a common theme in our support groups, right? And especially with young kids of I'm feeling like, my kid actually says that they're embarrassed of me. They don't want me to come to school pickup anymore because I don't look like me. That's really hard, right? It's hard as the parent to process that and feel pretty triggered by those feelings. And it's also like, how do you support your kid through that? Let your kid know if you're going to be coming home with a port, an ostomy, an amputation, all of these things. You want to give them, like a week probably, start talking about the week ahead of time so that they have time to start, again, processing through what that looks like. Maybe you can read them books about it. They can ask you questions so that when it happens, they aren't shocked. Then I talk about having open, honest, and developmentally appropriate communication with your kids. Use short phrases. As adults, we tend to make things more complicated than it really is, and it's hard for us to use short, simple sentences. I like to imagine sort of like magnetic poetry. And sometimes what I encourage with parents is to actually write out what you want your kid to know, and then go back through one or two times to edit it down to as short of sentence as possible and like the most simple language. And then maybe like cut and paste to move things around. You can always expand, so don't overwhelm your kids. Start really, really small. Make sure that you're going to include words that your child will overhear. So if you're going to be having chemotherapy, radiation, immunotherapy, use those words and explain them. Explain what cancer is. This is when books are really helpful, or there are videos for kids that explain this. So it's not like you have to be an expert. You don't have to be a scientist. Just use these resources to explain it to kids. I try to avoid metaphors with young kids, with all kids in particular, but especially young children, because they are very concrete thinkers. So, I know for some families this works. So it's not like I'm saying never do it, but like in general, if you're saying like cancer is like a monster, that it's in your body, some young kids might actually imagine a monster, and might be very confusing. Certainly, if you're going to start having conversations about death and dying, I really am a proponent of using the words death and dying. Don't use euphemisms like passing away, going away. That's very confusing for kids. They certainly, you don't want them confusing going to sleep with dying. So by using the actual words and defining them, you're actually empowering your kids. And keep in mind that it's adults who have a lot of baggage with these words. We have had a lifetime to understand and give meaning to these words, which often are negative and scary. For a lot of kids, this is the first time they're hearing these words, so they're a blank slate. It's your opportunity to sort of define it, create the narrative. They won't go into this being scared, if you are able to define it without it being scary. Consider planning out your message ahead of time. Maybe practice with a good friend, with your therapist, get some feedback about what you're saying, how to make it better. And definitely be careful of promises. This might be just my own issue, but even clinically, so many times I hear parents say, and then I promised my kid I would never die. um, we all die because we're all living creatures. And then going back to that idea of trust and our kids trusting us, I don't want you to set yourself up to be lying to your kids. So be careful of the P word. You can talk about doing everything you can to feel better, and you can talk about, the doctor's giving you good medicine, and a lot of things that you have control over, you can talk about. But just be careful of what you're going to promise your kids. These are some examples of like short sentences that you might want to use. Like I said, keeping it super short is helpful. Keeping it very focused on actions and behaviors is good. Um, Things that you certainly want to cover, actually, this is on the next slide, are the four C's. So kids will usually want to wonder about these four things. Can I catch it? Did I cause it? Can I cure it? And who will take care of me? So, you first want your kids to know that cancer is not their fault. Nothing that they said or did made you get cancer. And this is that magical thinking of young kids again, where they say, I remember, last month and I hit your boobie and you said it hurt. And now you say you have breast cancer. That's because I hit you, right? Like they'll put that together. Honest to goodness, I've worked with young adults who say, I know this is ridiculous and I shouldn't think this, but I had this terrible fight with my dad, and then now he has cancer, and I can't help but think like, oh, did something it's about my anger, it caused his cancer. So I think there's a part of all of us that makes that association and has those thoughts. So it's really important that you reiterate with children that nothing you said or did caused someone to get cancer. We also want kids to know cancer is not contagious. Especially now in this world with COVID and where we wear masks, it's very confusing. I think it's helpful if you can not use the word sick in describing cancer, only because sick is often what we say in conjunction with something that is contagious. So that's why I like to you just say it's cancer or call cancer disease. And then that way it helps to just sort of separate that from the idea of it being contagious. But you might have to come back to this a lot, especially with young kids, and say, like, why we're wearing masks is because, dad is immunocompromised, and that means his immune system isn't very strong because of the medicine they're giving him. And we don't want to give him any germs. So that's why we're wearing masks. It doesn't mean that we can catch cancer from him. Say things like, you can always, hug and snuggle and be with dad who has cancer. You're not going to catch it. Kids are often very caring, empathetic. They want to be helpful caregivers, and that can be wonderful. Like giving them little jobs, like getting you fuzzy socks, getting you a glass of water. That's lovely. For a lot of kids, they want to feel like they're helping. But in general, we want them to know that that's not their job, that their job isn't to be a caregiver, that really they just should be a kid, and all they need to do is give you lots of love, and that's like the best medicine you can get. Kids often worry, they're very egocentric, and that's okay. Developmentally, that's where they're at. And so they need to know that no matter what happens, they will be loved and cared for. I think this is why it's really important to make those plans about who will be part of that caregiving team, including long term, like sort of who would step in if you need to be gone in an emergency or for an extended stay. Because kids kind of want to know, like, what would happen, right? Like, who's going to make my lunch? Who's going to bring me to school? You want to be able to have answers for that. And then lastly, let your kids know that this is an ongoing open conversations. You can ask me questions now or later. I will let you know. If I get new information, I will come to you and I will share it with you. You will get updates. If I don't know, I'll tell you I don't know, and I will do my best to find the information. Maybe together we can talk to my doctor or write a my chart message. But I'll do what I can to find out the information. So, just some special points to go through. The first is a reminder that every kid is different. You might have a kid on the spectrum or who just tends to be really fact oriented, and some of the more flowery language or feeling stuff is just, it's not going to resonate. And maybe it's keeping it super factual. There's even a kid's book specific to this about I have a question about cancer that is, it was really written for kids who have autism. So finding resources that match your kids' way of processing information is great. Um, Again, you kind of know your kids' best time of day when they're going to be most receptive to having conversations, when they're going to ask the hard questions. Be prepared for them to always ask the hard questions at bedtime because we know that's when kids like to ask the hard questions. I do like to say, specifically around that one, because that comes up a lot. It is okay if a kid asks you a question at a really difficult time, or if like you're just not up for it, to always just say something to first validate their question and their feeling by saying, that's a really great question, and I really want to talk about this with you. You can also say, I want to talk about this with you. Right now, I'm not feeling up to it, but then always give them a time that you will. So, how about tomorrow at lunchtime? We can come back to this. I'll make sure I'll remember. I'm going to write this down so that you can let it go. Tomorrow at lunch, I'll bring this conversation back up and I can answer your question. That's always okay. As long as you give your kid a time to come back to it, you don't always have to have these big conversations right when your kids ask. It's okay to show emotions. That's another question I get all the time. Like, oh, I probably shouldn't cry in front of my kids. I mean, it's probably best not to like full out like fall apart around your kids, perhaps. But it's certainly okay to cry. Modeling emotion is very healthy with children. They need to know that it's okay to feel sad. They know it's okay to feel angry. We want to acknowledge that all feelings are okay. They all have a purpose. The best thing you can do is then have the feeling with them and then work it all the way through. So once you're kind of done having the feeling, talk through and editorialize like what you're doing with that feeling. So if you got off a phone call and you're really angry and maybe you kind of just like, "Ugh," like you kind of like growl or yell or something, you might say, "Oh, I'm just feeling really angry right now because I can't have treatment tomorrow and I was really wanting to, have my last treatment. I think I just need a moment to go punch my pillow. I'm going to be right back." Or I need to go take a few deep breaths and then come back. And maybe once you're more regulated, say, "Oh, that was really helpful that I did that." What's wonderful about that experience is you role modeled having a feeling and then something you did to work through it and get to the other side. So if you can sort of talk through what you do with your feelings, you're teaching your kids how to do the same. And I think this works truly with any age. It's a really great tool. I talked about timing as far as kids asking you questions, but you should also do the same. So Ideally, you're not going to bring up big conversations at bedtime, or if you have a teenager, like right before the night of a big game that they have. Think about the time that your kid is most receptive to big conversations. Listening for underlying messages is just a small point, but again, sometimes kids almost talk in code. And usually, as a parent, you kind of know how your kids do this. But I've had parents tell me that their kid kept asking them, "Are you going to be at my band concert next month? Are you going to be at my band concert next month?" And mom kept saying, "Yeah, it's on the calendar. It's on the calendar." But what the kid really meant was, "Are you still going to be alive next month for my band concert?" And they just didn't know how to ask it. So it might be that your kid is worrying about something or asking a question a certain way. And as a parent, you get this. Like if you're hearing sort of the same message or question a few times and you feel like, gosh, I thought we talked about this, maybe take a step back and just think, I wonder if there's something else going on. And again, it's not like you're a detective, you're not a therapist, but it's okay to just go back to the kid and say, I heard you saying this. Can you tell me more about it? Like maybe just kind of ask them more questions about what they're trying to talk about. Know that things are going to come up that you don't expect. It's always okay to come back to things. I think that's really important. Sometimes as parents, we feel really put on the spot and we feel like we have to handle it right now, right? A behavior happens and we have to respond. Obviously, if it's about safety, we do have to respond in the moment. But if it's about a conversation or answering a question, a consequence, we can always say, I need some time. I need some time to think about this, and I will come back to you. Again, you want to build that trust with your kid and say, I will come back to this, but just give me a day. Give me a day to think about it. If your kids are in school, daycare, whatever it is, think about how much of your kid's day is spent with other adults. It's probably important that they know what's going on at home because your kid might be very different at school than they are at home. And in a great way, they have access to all these caring adults that can help support them while they're at this place. So finding at least one person at school that can be the trusted confidant, whether it's the school counselor, a social worker, a teacher, that can be your contact, and maybe you keep them updated about what's happening. Say, please let me know if you're seeing any behaviors I should know about at school. Let me know. It also is helpful for your kid because it lets the teachers know, it gives them some flexibility. So if a kid is struggling, the teachers know why and can give them some more room and some more support. It might be that a teacher and a child can work out a special communication if a kid's having a hard day. Like if you call on me and I give you a certain sort of like thumbs up, thumbs down, it means I don't feel like I can talk. Or maybe if I come up and ask you to go to the school counselor, like you get certain passes to go talk to someone. There's a lot of support that can happen at school. So just think about that. Actually, on our website, we have a handout specific to how to talk to your child's school if you're looking for more specifics about communication with school. Teens are really a special type of animal. It is a really hard time, to be a teenager. It's developmentally the time that you're starting to separate from your family. Your peers are almost more of your family than your parents and siblings are. So if a parent is diagnosed with cancer and you're a teenager, it can be it's a real push-pull. In fact, research really shows this is like the hardest age to have a parent with cancer is when you're a teenager. Because again, you're trying to be more independent, you're trying to step away, but then you feel pulled back towards home, like you should be around more to help out your mom or dad or to help with younger siblings. It's very confusing. You're at a time that you have access to all this information that maybe, and you can understand it, but that might be really scary. Communication is already hard for a lot of teens and parents, just a lot of friction. So you might have to think about more creative ways of having conversations with teens. Some options that I have known that has gone successfully is it might be actually easier to email or text, honestly, or video, like leave videos for each other. If that is easier to interface with each other than face to face, that's okay. Maybe even it's having like a shared communal notebook where you write back and forth to each other because it's easier to do that than to have just a live conversation. That's okay. There are lots of ways that you can communicate with one another that if it's helpful to somehow remove some of the heightened friction or feelings, whatever works. For teens, it's really important to have connection to other teens who have a parent with cancer. So making sure that they have peers who understand connections to support groups, to camps like KESM, that's going to be really important. For families that have divorced parents or separated parents, that can add a layer of struggle, of course, because you want to be on the same page with the same message. I'm just noticing the time, so I want to make sure I get through on my slides. Talking about death and dying might be important if you're facing a terminal diagnosis. There's some really great books to help with that. I like to talk about managing your message because if you don't, someone else will. In this day and age of social media and information getting out, there are times that, like, especially if you're trying to keep things from your kids, but other people know, you've got to think that that information might come back to your kids a different way. So just keep that front and center of your mind. And then wash, rinse, repeat. Like these are never one and done conversations. So continually come back to it, reinforce it, answer your kids' questions. I love this quote. It is life is not fair. Life hurts. Life is good. These three seemingly incompatible expressions are really three parts of the whole of living. They are threads woven through the tapestry each one of us creates as the visible expression of our being a part of humanity. To accept these three is not to abandon hope or optimism, or to deny our real grief. To accept them is to rid ourselves of the unnecessary suffering that comes from struggling against these three truths and trying to make them something they are not. I include this because life is constantly all of this all at once. And I think if you have kids, you really live this every day where something can feel really hard one moment, and then the next moment it's just pure joy and laughter. And our kids can really keep us grounded. And they're so lovely at being able to bop in and out of feeling deeply and then going out and having fun. And it's great to allow them to have that, to continue to just say, like, maybe you're having a hard conversation and then they just say, I'm going to go out and play. That's great. That's a wonderful way to regulate. And we can learn something from that as well. We don't want our kids to feel like they're the ones that are having to make us smile and take care of us. So I want to talk about signs of distress quickly. So usually parents get it. Like they can pick up on red flags that their kids are different. Like I said earlier, it is completely normal to see some new behaviors and some shifts. That's normal, and there's nothing to be immediately concerned about. However, if you feel like your kid is expressing some sort of new behavior and it's persisting for weeks at a time, and especially if it is somehow impeding their ability to like function in life, that's a time that you do want to pay attention and say, maybe we do need more help. And that doesn't mean you have to like really worry. It just means, my goodness, my kid could really benefit from some extra support. So if you're seeing sort of again anything that's concerning, this is the time to reach out. Finding some kind of mental health support through maybe it's through a therapist, especially if they're going to work with kids, being able to find someone that does play therapy, art therapy, something that's more experiential. That's what kids will benefit from. If your child is struggling with a specific memory or experience, perhaps they saw like you get taken away by an ambulance or you fainted, something that was really, really scary, they might need a very specific type of trauma intervention, something like EMDR, to help them work through that scary memory. Don't forget all of the other great support people outside of mental health. So, like I said, at school, you have access to social workers, counselors, nurses, teachers, coaches. At a hospital, there are also social workers. You might have child life specialists that can work with you. If you're connected with a church or spiritual center, there might be folks there. There are family camps and kid camps like KESM I talked about for your kids. These are great ways to connect families. Any other way to get connected to local families facing cancer, if you can be in a support group at, CSCLA or somewhere else. If not locally, is there a virtual support group like through Bright Spot Network, Wonders and Worries, Pickles? Get connected because being able to know you're not alone in this is really important. And I had said this earlier, but real families do have positive things to say, such as cancer has taught my family to be empathetic, how to be self-reliant and confident, how to connect and appreciate each other, and how to appreciate life and the silver linings. I end with this Maya Angelou quote because I love it, and I'm just going to switch out people with kids and say that kids will forget what you said, kids will forget what you did, but kids will never forget how you made them feel. So, just to double down on my point of presence, that if you make your kids feel seen and heard, to just show up and know that you are there, That is the most important thing through all of this. It is okay to make mistakes and say the wrong thing. You can always fix it up and say the right thing. But if you're just showing up and there, that will make all the difference to your kid and they will be okay. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing because I think we might have a few questions. Yes.
Carissa, we truly appreciated your very meaningful presentation. And with that, we invite people to put any questions they may have into the Q&A, but I will get started with a few questions that we received at registration. So someone asked, how detailed should a conversation be when a parent is on hospice?
Hmm. That's a really good question. In my experience, most parents find the most success if they know that they will die from their cancer. They usually hold off on having conversations about death and dying until it's really obvious that they're actively dying. And what I mean by that is physical changes that their kids pick up on. Because parents will often say, like, right now I'm okay. And yes, my doctors say I might only live 6 months, but right now I look the same. I'm taking them to school. I don't feel like I need to worry my kids right now by telling them I'm going to die. I agree. Like most clinicians would agree, you don't have to have that conversation immediately. You usually wait to talk to your kids about your dying when you are like no longer able to get out of bed, no longer really able to talk and engage with them. Those are really the times that you start having those conversations of, I'm dying and what does that look like? Um, as far as like how detailed that is, gosh, I think being able to answer your kids' questions for sure. If they're not really wanting to talk about it, it might be having someone else besides you or your partner, because it might just be too tender. It might be if they have a therapist, a grandparent, someone else, maybe trying like reading them a book. So at least we're talking about the information, even if they don't have questions. It's trying to follow their lead, really. We don't need to like overwhelm them with information. It's like meeting them where they're at. So of course we don't want to like pretend that nothing is happening. That's not helpful to pretend we don't want to pretend everything's okay, but we also don't need to tell them everything. So I realize as I'm reflecting, I didn't give a very specific answer to how detailed do I need to be because truly it does depend. It kind of depends on the family, the situation. That's the exact time that I would say reach out to someone, whether that's at CSCLA, to Bright Spot, talk to someone, a clinician that can hear your story and perhaps give you some feedback about what kind of conversation to have and what resources might be helpful.
Thank you so much. And then we also received another question. So I know your presentation really focused on parents who have cancer, but someone is asking, how do you find balance when you have a child who is healthy and a child with a cancer diagnosis?
Yeah, that's pretty hard. It's pretty different if we're talking about kids with a cancer diagnosis. And you're right, finding that balance, that's hard. I just want to honor how hard that must be because, of course, you're thinking about all of your kids and wanting to make sure you're attending to everyone, even though it feels like a lot of your time and attention is going to your child with cancer. I think the idea that if you're aware of it already, that's a big step. Like you're aware that you want to be giving some intentional time to everyone in the family. So being able to actually carve out special time, maybe one-on-one with kids, the other kids, the siblings who don't have cancer, making sure they feel special and that they have your attention, that it's not always about the child with cancer, that would be really, really helpful and beneficial. There are just going to be times that, of course, it's unrealistic and you do have to really give more time and attention to the child with cancer. But you're right, it's constantly a balance. But if you're making some time and effort to give special attention to all your kids, that will make a big difference.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So we have reached the end of our time together, but Chris, I want to thank you once again. We really, really appreciate your presentation, just everything that you shared. Um, and then I'd now like to hand things off to Jennifer Comiskey, CSCLA's clinical supervisor and youth program manager, to close out the webinar for us and share some information about our child, teen, and family programming.
Thanks so much, Abby, and thank you again, Carissa, for such a fantastic presentation. Just a little bit about our Child, Teen, and Family program. We offer free support for families impacted by cancer with children under the age of 18, and we support the whole family. So that includes children living with cancer and youth that have a parent, sibling, or other family member with cancer. Our programs include counseling and support groups. We have an ongoing parent group, and our next 8-week Creating Connections for Kids and Teens series is actually starting very soon on September 9th. These groups give kids and teens the opportunity to connect with and feel supported by their peers. We have age-appropriate discussions about cancer. We explore feelings, learn coping skills, and it's all in a really fun and safe environment. Additionally, we offer educational workshops like this one. We have a monthly virtual family fun night where we have interactive activities and games for the whole family. And we also offer a variety of in-person social events throughout the year. We have one coming up. It's on Saturday, August 23rd, and we're going to be visiting the Noah's Ark exhibit at the Skirball Cultural Center. So if you want to learn more about our CTF program, you can visit our website. We also have past webinars available on there. You can learn more about our programs as a whole for CSCLA. And to receive a copy of today's slides, you can also email info@cancersupportla.org.